This
go ahead
conference will now be recorded.
call this work session to order. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. The public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. I'd like to encourage everybody that's not presenting to mute your phones. That way we can eliminate any echoes and any audio distortions. So with that, we'll go right into the board communications. And Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I'm working with AOC. I'm working on broadband. I'm working on community action team, and that's it for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Bangs.
I have been weathering the end of the year, school year stuff with all of our kids here. I'm having a lot of fun going to promotion and graduation parties. It's also kind of noted that positive stress does end up exhibiting itself in small children and even middle-aged children as they're more emotional, they're more tender right now. So for those of you who are around children right now, have some grace with them, because they're weathering some, though it's positive stress, they're weathering some stress. And then on another note, I'm just reaching out to local pastors in regards to trying to invite them to our giant, hopefully, childcare meeting, because as we all know, traditionally, churches have facilities that can be leased during the middle of the week for potential childcare. It's a thought process. It's marinating. So, but yeah, no, I'm still working on childcare. So.
Yes, very, very critical to cast a wide net in talking about resources in the community for childcare. So, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb.
I really don't have a lot to report. I have begun meeting with Director Hendrickson, right? What? Gail. To talk about beginning the process of that is in the work, our strategy, our strategic plan. That relates to water and natural resources in the county, and so we're going to be doing some initial investigation into conditions, and then putting together a climate action team. So I think that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Appreciate your work on that. Commissioner Toyoka.
Just really quickly, Public Works Assessment, McKinsey team we had our final team meeting yesterday, and we will see some reports by the end of the week. I believe there should be in 5 parts. So it's we'll get updated on that, read those, and then we can have one other final coordination meeting, I believe, with McKinsey. And lastly, I'm going to meet with the sheriff tomorrow to review some public safety items and hopefully coordinate better on that issue to bring something back to the county commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I have nothing to report. We'll go ahead and start with our legislative update, and Phil is on the line, and we'll turn it over to Phil from Pac West.
All right, thank you, Commissioner and Commissioners, for the opportunity to come for you today. So just quick updates. Right now we are in the breadth of Ways and Means moving at full speed. Last Friday they had about a 40-50 item agenda. They're expecting to have another one of those this week. The goal is to sine die between this Friday and the 25th. And so ideally session will be over then. A lot of these bills are very vague at the pace they're doing. So there's a lot of rulemaking that's being delegated from these bills, especially these last few coming out. The public safety bills definitely are going to have a lot of rulemaking, as well are the healthcare bills. And so we don't know when that will start yet. That will be contingent upon the governor signing the bills. And then the clock starts ticking for them to implement the rulemaking process. They only have a few. There are a couple budgets that I just wanted to give you a heads up on. DCLD, the budget, the land use budget. They do have some budget notes and additional investments in there that I will be sending Monica in writing that would be of interest to the county. I believe some of those funds are set aside for rural counties to, if you have projects that are bike or pedestrian or a mix of modal, that if you are needing studies or things to be more competitive for federal grants, there is a pot of funds being allocated to the budget this year for the rural counties to apply for, so that they can then apply for federal grants and be more competitive. So I will be pulling those type of items out of these budgets to make sure that you folks are aware of that. The only big budgets left that I see are the OHA and DHS budget that should be scheduled this week, if not the beginning of next week. And after those two budgets go, it's really just capital construction left. I did want to also note our bill that Senate Bill 622, the levy bill for funding $10 million for levies, that passed out of committee this. Oh, sorry.
Hello.
That passed out of committee and will go to full Ways and Means for consideration. That occurred this week as well, and so I know that was a priority one bill for us. And then I believe there is a couple other bills that are going to be coming forward, but to be honest, we don't know we know amendments are coming, but we have not seen them yet. We're at 1 hour notices. One of them is one of our bills that we were watching, 2172, related to adjustments to sentencing. But I know there's amendments coming to this. Everybody knows that, just nobody has seen them yet. And so as soon as we get that, we will review that for the county as well. But I know that they're going to be significant and we'll probably be changing the bill quite a bit. So just wanted to pause there to see if you had any questions.
Thank you, Philip. Great news on the levy bill. That's fantastic. Any questions for Philip from Pac West? Not seeing any. Turn it back over to you.
All right. I think that's most of a lot of the rest of the update is just political changes that are occurring. Right now, they are, from our understanding, they have reached agreement between the caucuses on how to exit session, remaining in the building, and doing so in a smooth fashion as possible. But you are starting to see more of the political bills moving forward. Rules, there's no guarantee that a lot of them have not done vote counting on the opposite chamber. So that might cause some contention here in the next few days. But other than that, it seems like they have a clear path for adjournment. So that is our update.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Philip.
Right.
Appreciate the update.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
Bye.
And with that, we'll turn it over to our health director, Margot Lalich, for the public health update.
Good morning, commissioners. Just a quick update. We're about 700 individuals, I would say maybe about 600 at this point, away from the 65% threshold. We remain in low risk. We are very busy with smaller outreach activities that I mentioned were on the horizon. This is the last month of our regularly scheduled clinics on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're right on track with what we're doing. As you may be aware, the frequency of our updates are decreasing and aligning with the changes in updates and information that we're getting from all of our state and community partners, as well as how we're updating the website to support the information needs of the community going forward. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Commissioner Bangs.
I just have one. How are we doing on our percentage of return people for the second shot? Are we still doing really well, or has that changed?
We're still doing really well, but I can't give you an exact percentage. That's actually a complicated number. About every 2 weeks, we seem to be getting a report on second dose numbers from OHA. When they send us that information, it's actually not correct. Thankfully, our partnership with Columbia Memorial Hospital and the business analyst helps us filter through that data. And then we actually then use our PIC team to call individuals to confirm whether or not they've received their second dose, because they may have gotten a second dose in another state, but it hasn't been registered in our state database. So we are doing our due diligence to make that information as accurate as possible, as well as individuals who are vaccinated out of state coming back, and they are calling us and saying, hey, I want you to count my vaccination, because they know all vaccinations count right now. So we're issuing cards to them, as well as providing, updating the statewide alert registry.
Just a follow up on that, we're not too far away from our 65%, which is amazing news. But is there a consequence if we don't by chance reach the 70%? I haven't heard. And what if our second dose percentage, is there information regarding that?
Yeah, so the governor's been very clear, and all the public communication, and in our communication that is first doses, in our vaccine bulletin, that's what we're counting as first doses, not second doses. So it's 16 plus for first doses of any vaccine, and obviously Johnson & Johnson is a single dose vaccine. We will get to our 65% tile in this county. We're already at low risk, but once we reach 65%, I'm not going to say it makes it permanent, because I just don't, I don't want to say that. We have no idea what will change going forward. The 70% threshold is a statewide threshold. And so once Oregon reaches 70%, that applies to all counties across Oregon. I think it's, at this point in time, I think Clatsop County would be very hard pressed to get to 70% at any point soon.
Thank you for the clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Director Lalich? Well, thank you very much, and pass along our thanks and appreciation to your entire team for the outreach they're doing in the community to, get the vaccine to folks with pop-up clinics, and really removing barriers to access in Clatsop County. So tremendous job.
Thank you.
And thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to our comprehensive plan update and schedule, page 3 of the agenda, and Community Development Director Henriksen.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. We're here today because at the April 20th work session, the board directed staff to put the work of the citizen advisory committees and the comprehensive plan update process on a temporary hold to give staff a chance to go back and evaluate the process and the schedule, and to bring back any revisions or enhancements that could be made to the process. And so that's why we're here today. Just to give a little bit of perspective and overview, we all know our comp plan was adopted in 1980. We know it's 41 years old. And it used to be that until 2007, the state actually mandated this type of process. It was called periodic review. And the state would set a schedule maybe every 5, 7, 10 years, and the county would have been required to go through this process. But in 2007, they ended that and basically said only cities that are above 10,000 in population have to do this now. And part of the reason is it's a very long process. Communities are given up to 3 years under periodic review to complete the process, and a lot of them struggle with it. So this is not unique for us. We've undertaken a voluntary review. And when we started the process in February 2019, we had basically a 33-month schedule, which would have kept us in line had we been through a formal periodic review process. We spent probably the first 3 months recruiting and appointing the Citizen Advisory Committee members. So even though we started in February, first 3 months, there really weren't any meetings. In June of 2019, we did 5 open houses in different geographic areas around the county to kind of kick the plan update process off and try to inform the public about what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how the process was going to work. And then our committee members started meeting in June of 2019 and met all the way through December of that year. And then we had scheduled in a 3-month work hiatus so staff could do some follow-up work on what had come out of those committees. And then of course pandemic hit, and so we lost another 3 months. And then when we did restart, we expanded the process just to accommodate all the challenges that come along with a global pandemic. So in the 2.5 years since we really kicked off the project in February 2019, the committee members have actually met a total of 18 months out of that entire time. So they've actually done quite a bit of work. And of that 18 goals in the comprehensive plan, we've completed review of 8 of the goals and we have 10 left. So in moving forward and trying to identify where the process was working and where improvements are needed, one of the things that came to mind in terms of a strength was that we do have a very committed group of committee members that have been appointed. Whether there's agreement on the policy recommendations that may be coming out of that, is a different question, but definitely the work and effort that the committee members have put in has been one of the strong points, I think, of the process. And then also planning staff, Julia and Ian and Victoria, when she was here, have put in literally hundreds of hours preparing the agenda packages and really learning in depth what goes into each comprehensive plan goal, how the state process works, what are the administrative roles. So it's really been a good learning experience for staff as well, and they've been very dedicated to it. But on the other hand, we've heard a lot of concerns. It is a long process, and we know that there's concerns about the length of the process. We've heard a lot about being sure that we continue to maintain a strong public participation component as we move forward. And then also, and perhaps most importantly, is making sure that the policies that are coming out of our committees are consistent with state and federal laws, and that we as a county will be able to implement them. And that's probably the most important thing, because it doesn't do any good to have a committed staff and volunteers and public participation if we end up with a product that isn't consistent with state law and that we can't implement rule-wise. So staff has put together 4 different scenarios for you. It's on page 11 of your agenda package. And the 4 scenarios really span the gamut from just saying, we're done, we're going to stop the process completely, and maybe we'll come back to it later when we have some time. The second scenario looks at utilizing just the Planning Commission to review the main countywide plan and using our planning area committees to look at the community plans. The third scenario is kind of a tweak on that, in that it still has the planning area groups looking at their own individual community plans, but it also acknowledges that the countywide Citizen Advisory Committee has put a lot of work into this project and have some investment in it. And what that scenario number 3 would do would basically merge the Planning Commission and that countywide committee and let them complete the work of reviewing the countywide plan moving forward. So we would consolidate their 2 reviews, where previously we had them doing the Planning Commission and the countywide CAC doing 2 separate reviews. They would work in tandem now. And then the 4th scenario would be simply to just let the process go on as it was going, and just continue to move forward at that same pace, but throughout all these scenarios incorporating more board updates and input and chances to have some oversight over the process and involvement in the process. So as staff, we recommended option number 3. And what we want to accomplish with option number 3, it's a 1-year process. We identified 4 tasks that we need to complete to get through this. Task number 1 would be to continue and complete our review and update of the existing policies. Number 2 would be to identify areas of concern over the next 20 years that are going to impact land use in the county. And it's important that we recognize that we're looking at land use, because that's what our comp plan is. It's the foundation for our land use regulations. We need to, number 3, make sure that we get the 6 community plans updated because they're just as old as our comp plan. And then number 4, we really need to update the inventories and the maps for goals 5, 16, and 17, which deal with the wetlands, the coastal shorelands, the wildlife habitat, and historic preservation, and a huge variety of subjects. But those definitely need to be updated. So as we put together the proposed scenario, we tried to take in and balance all the considerations that we're hearing: public participation, board input and involvement. We want to make sure that we recognize capacity limits, because even as we move out of pandemic, there are still limitations in terms of, how much public involvement we can get, how much time committee members and board members have to invest in the project, and how much time and resources the county, in terms of the staff, are available to staff the project as well. So we tried to balance all of this, and in order to accommodate a revised schedule, we're also looking at having to make changes on how we do things. And I know that the changes are not going to make everyone happy, and that's just part of compromising and discussion. And these are starting points for discussion for the board. So the changes that we would propose would be to take the planning area advisory committees, let them focus solely on updating their community plans, and let them focus only on that. And that would be probably about a 6-month process to complete those. We would then also recommend combining the Planning Commission and the countywide advisory committee to go through the goals and policies in the main comprehensive plan. And in doing so, we continue to maintain that geographic representation, because the countywide CAC consists of not only 5 appointed members, but also representatives from each of our planning area CACs. So there continues to be that liaison network between the geographic regions and the work of the main body and the work of the planning area committees. And so the role of those liaisons will actually become more important, because they truly now will be the connection between the 2 groups. We want to, rather than the line-by-line review of existing policies that has been the trend over the past probably 6 to 9 months as we've worked through this process, that's going to have to change if we're going to accommodate a shorter time frame. And so staff would be doing more work up front to basically prepare a draft goal as a starting point for the discussion for the Planning Commission and joint CAC meetings. And then they can provide input and recommendations on that. We would take it to a public town hall hearing after that, and then make more revisions, bring it back to the Planning Commission for a final recommendation to the board. And you'll see in our schedule that we've incorporated several areas where there are opportunities for public input, for board review, and to attend town hall meetings or to hold work sessions as we go goal by goal through the remaining year. So we've tried to incorporate that. We also need to make sure, and this is part of a bigger discussion, about making sure we have clear parameters and guidelines about how we proceed through each goal, because we want to make sure that the committee members are focusing on the big picture, that they're not being bogged down in word stuffing, and that they're creating policies, as I said at the beginning, that are consistent with state and federal law and that we'll be able to implement when everything is said and done. And so there'll be more of an emphasis on implementable policies and establishing those parameters as we move forward. Also, clearly more to have more board involvement in the process. We'll be providing weekly updates in the county manager's report, and then monthly updates to the board, either at a work session like this or during one of the regular meetings. And then again, we have a series of monthly town halls scheduled throughout the remaining year of the process. And then to address the public participation component, We would like to work with the board members, each of you, to schedule at least one open house in your district or planning area, and to coordinate that with you, because you are probably more aware than anybody on staff of conflicts that may be going on in the community, whether it's graduations or special events or things that might be going on. And have you help us be partners in getting that public input and representing your district and getting that communication going. We would also like to create just a separate comprehensive plan website that is not part of the main county's website. Our information is there and there's a lot of it, but you have to go through several layers to get it. And so we're thinking just a one shot during the project, you know, Clatsop 2040 or something website that makes it easier for people to find the information that they might be looking for. We're also making some recommendations about sending out postcards that have all the meeting dates. We have those identified now, and send those out to every unincorporated county. And also the possibility of sending a postage paid return questionnaire that could perhaps help us get some input from the community about what they see as challenges and opportunities for land use planning over the next 20 years. And then we will continue to always have our public comment sessions at the beginning and end of each meeting. And we always take written comments at any point in the process. So I appreciate you listening. This was a very long presentation, but I really had a lot to say. We know it's not a perfect process. We know that we still have challenges trying to reach out to underrepresented or unrepresented segments of the population that we just haven't been able to tap into for a variety of reasons. We really know that we need to, I'll say, up our game when it comes to establishing the parameters and making sure that roles and responsibilities are clear, and what is being expected of all the participants in the process. And then making sure that we keep that long range, big picture focus, and just acknowledging that we will have limitations. And because there are always going to be limitations, we will never have a perfect process. So, but we are trying to put forward what we believe to be the most balanced that we can come up with at this point in time. So given that, I will end my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gail, and appreciate all the hard work that the staff put into this presentation and report. I really like the recommendation that you came up with, but I want to hear from the rest of the commission as well. Commissioner Thompson has her hand up.
Eager to speak. Thank you. Echo the chair's appreciation. And I'm looking around the screen. I see so many familiar and beloved faces. You know, my colleagues, my neighbors, we've worked together on these issues for a long, long time. And I'm grateful for your passion, for your devotion to the cause. We don't always agree. And part of the agreement or disagreement is, what role are we filling? The Board of County Commissioners is the governing body of this county. We are directly accountable to the voters of this county. And I think I can speak for my colleagues when I say we feel responsible for the well-being of everybody in every place in this county. That's our legal role. And we do it with all of the joy and skill we can muster. In our capacity as members of the governing body, it's our job to appoint various groups to fulfill our mission of caring for the people in the place. Those appointed positions are necessarily more limited in scope and authority. I think one of the things that we've learned, because life is a growth, it's a growth experience if we're doing it the right way. And Director Henriksen and her staff have been on the leading edge, the pointed edge of that learning growth curve. It's a tough job. You've done well. Thank you. What I saw, though, was that we as a governing body had not been clear enough in the role definitions with which we empowered you to work for us and the people of Clatsop County. So that's why we did the pause. That's why we said we have to clarify roles and responsibilities. So I look at the packet before us, and I appreciate hearing from the Director Henriksen about her recommendations, the staff recommendations on how to go forward. For me, all of this is predicated on doing this clarifying of the roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission, because we represent all of the public. I've been told, well, whoever shows up gets to be in charge. Nah, that's not it. That doesn't work. We have to listen to everybody, and sometimes we have to listen for people, because public participation, right now, it's a privilege. People who have the time and the money and the energy to show up to meetings or to fill out questionnaires, if we go forward that way, which I think is a good idea, those are people who have enough to be able to do that. We're privileged if we have time and energy and money to engage in public participation. There are a lot of people who can't do that, and those people still matter. We also have to listen to those people. So we've done our best to listen to your fine work about what you see, our CAC members. What do you see about what we should be looking at? How should we go forward? There's a whole rest of the community, and the governing body has the responsibility to listen to and listen for them. I mean, one of the things about running for public office is a lot of us have gone out knocking on doors. We have knocked on doors, in my case, over a half of the geographic area of Clatsop County. That's a lot of doors. That's a lot of wonderful people. And going to their doors gives them the opportunity to tell us directly, this is what matters to me. Have you thought about this? We have that accountability. We have that opportunity. We have that responsibility. So that's our process going forward. That's what we're going to hold true. I've heard a lot of comments from devoted members who say basically, I've shown up, I've worked, you have to put me back to work, you have to let me define the work that I do, and then you have to implement what I say is the right thing to do. Dear friends and neighbors, that isn't how this works. We have to gather all of it. We have to listen again, not just to you, to and for others. And then we look at the law, and then we go forward in the way that is for the best result for everybody. So thank you for your work, and please understand how we go forward with our work. So that's kind of a speech instead of a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I appreciate that. I think that one of the unfortunate things about the way we initiated the pause is that it probably communicated to folks that we didn't value their input, and that's not the case. We really do. And I appreciate Community Development Director Henriksen and the staff kind of coming up with a compromise here. I think it's a very well thought out plan moving forward. And again, thank you for everybody that's on this meeting and everyone that's part of these CACs and the community advisory committees. Thank you for your work. We do appreciate it. And I saw a hand up there. I think Commissioner Bangs had her hand up.
I did, thanks. And I echo what Commissioner Thompson and Quila are discussing in regards to appreciation for the work that has been done, but also that community involvement is a privilege. I know many that I talk to after the workday is complete, and I listen to those concerns also. And so I echo what both commissioners are discussing, and I'll admit I'm actually pretty passive between the second and the third option. I mean, I like the third option, and I frankly, either way that we go, I feel like we will get a result that will be usable for our future. And I guess one of my biggest concerns stemmed from a CAC member stating that she referred to the goals almost daily in her job as a real estate agent. That brought to the forefront to me the need for this document to be above reproach and following state laws explicitly. In the past, the materials submitted to the county staff from our CAC groups has been labeled by community members as aspirational or potentially illegal, one-sided. Those are just phrases from our community. And I really truly wish that this document is a balanced cross-section of our goals as a community while staying solidly within the lines of state regulations and laws. I also, this is a big one for me, I also want to reduce the workload for our staff and streamline this process, making it less laborious for all of us involved while creating a positive and respectful atmosphere for our staff to move forward on this project. Too often, I feel like our staff has borne the brunt of frustration, when in truth, they're just a messenger. And so I guess to summarize, we have a strategic plan that I would really like to free staffing time up for. And when staff shared with me how long it took to get through goal 1, which to me is a very politically benign goal in my opinion, I knew something needed to change. I knew that this process, how it was structured, though very full of discussion and full of good thoughts and just positive movement, I felt like it was too laborious. And so I feel I fully support what Gail has submitted, and I look forward to hopefully expediting this process for our future. And so yeah, I mean, I echo both Commissioner Quila and Thompson.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Banks. Any other comments from the members of the board? Commissioner Toyoka.
My only comment is, and I appreciate the work of staff and, Gail Henriksen and her team is giving options, but I can say from my background in the military, I love process and I love structure. I appreciate Schedule 3 because I believe that is the one that provides the most structure and should define the most process driven. The ability to have the local CACs provide input to the Planning Commission, they can assimilate that information and then provide input to the County Commission that is truly representative of the county's desires. And I appreciate that process, so I would stand behind Schedule 3 just based on the actual definition of responsibility and process that it brings to the system. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Banks.
I do have a question for Ms. Henriksen. In regards to how our planning commission and we're developing basically our standards for being a part of the planning commission, is that similar paperwork or that similar, let's all have proper decorum, show up, is that going to apply to the CAC committees also?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. And so what we have incorporated into our calendars right now is July 20th, the board will be meeting jointly with the Planning Commission and laying out your expectations and having a discussion about roles and responsibilities. And then in our scenario 3, we built in a time in August when the Planning Commission and the Countywide Citizen Advisory Committee, we would be meeting with them as staff to go over those same things that were discussed with the board and the Planning Commission, to also look at parameters and to talk about, again, just the whole statewide planning goal system, issues about ethics, and I'm working with county council to just basically put together a whole training program for their August meeting. And then we would actually begin the actual goal review in September. So you have July as the board to meet with the Planning Commission and set those expectations. And then in August, staff will take that same information to the Planning Commission and the CACs.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, decorum, respect, kindness, those are really big deals to me, especially in discussions where people have multiple different ideas and thought processes. And so I'm glad to hear that we are going to be addressing how we discuss things with each other so that we are coming away and created positive environments for all of those who are choosing to engage in these processes. That's really important for me because I feel like we as a body and are representative of our county, and it's who our children look up to. And so I want our children who are looking up to us to be able to emulate us on what is a positive way to engage in discussion. So thank you for that.
Any other comments? Commissioner Webb, we hadn't heard from you. Do you have anything to comment?
Yeah, I think this was a tremendous report on the part of staff. It was very thorough on those, and I think it was a terrific decision-making document for us and very well put together. I support the recommendation 3 as well. I think it's a great way to address what I have certainly heard as a lot of public concerns. And I think it's the right way to go. I'm probably the only person looking around on this at this host of gorgeous faces. I'm probably the only person who has actually worked on a comp plan in Oregon, and I've counted up, and I've been either a consultant or staff to 15 comprehensive plans in counties and cities, and I was not on the board actually when this plan was originally conceived, when the schedule was, and I would never have approved of the time horizon, the time frame that was suggested. And I also would have wanted us to do much more background technical information, especially about issues like natural resources, which would have, I think, saved a lot of time. But that didn't happen. And I think now it's time to move on. It's time, hopefully, for us to be able to meet face to face again. And I like this proposal very, very much. So I'm very much in support of it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Any further comments from Director Henriksen? Appreciate the discussion. Sounds like we've got some direction from the board moving forward. And again, thank you to your staff and all the hard work that went into this. With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Asbury Creek Bridge replacement options. I see Terry Hendricks has joined us here, and he can give us a on that, and it's on page 20.
Good morning, Commissioners. I come before you today to lay out the potential Asbury Creek Bridge replacement and the public road funding constraints therein. Asbury Creek Bridge is a wooden bridge located in the Arch Cape on Pacific Street, which is a local access or public dedicated road. Thus, your board has jurisdiction over that bridge. The bridge is approximately 19 feet long, 11 feet wide, and has a 6-inch public water line attached under the bridge. Asbury Creek is tidally influenced near its confluence with the Pacific Ocean during winter storms and king tide events. This bridge was closed by the county in the late 90s by then acting Public Works Director Randy Trevelyan due to safety concerns. The bridge has been posted as closed since that time. Public Works recently reposted the closure and blocked access to the bridge due to the advanced deterioration. Public Works has identified 4 options for the board to consider and provide direction to staff as to how you would like to proceed. Options at the board's discretion. Number 1 is to do nothing. The bridge is currently blocked off to vehicular traffic, while ORS states not liable for failure to improve the local access road or keep it in repair. There is a potential of physical harm should a pedestrian fall through an existing hole in the deck. The bridge will continue to deteriorate, increasing the potential physical harm aspect, and at some point will require the water line to be removed from the bridge and rerouted. Omitting the water line rerouting costs, this option is marginal and approximately $200 to $300 a year for monitoring and continued posting of the closure. Cost for monitoring and signage would come from the Transit Room Tax Fund. Number 2, remove the existing structure. Removing existing structure from above the mean high tide line would ensure no pedestrian or vehicular traffic could use the bridge, although more efficient blockading of the roadway would be required to ensure there would be no attempted passage. This would require the water line to be rerouted by boring under the creek bed, similar to the sewer line, or the water district could potentially span the creek with an adequately sized pole or steel beam and reattach the line. Cost of the removal, additional barricading using native planting and signage would come from the TRT funds, estimated to cost $3,000 to $4,000. An additional annual cost for monitoring and signage from the fund would be an additional $200 to $300 a year. Timetable for removal, 3 to 6 months from the Board of Commission's decision, depending on the Public Works scheduling. Option number 3, we can replace the bridge with a pedestrian bridge. Remove the existing bridge in its entirety and replace with a 30-foot long, 6-foot wide galvanized steel bridge featuring a steel graded ADA access deck with handrails. This would require engineering, regulatory permitting, the public bidding process, and construction inspection. This would also allow the water line to potentially be reattached to the new bridge. The bridge, being located on a public road, could utilize bike path funds that could pay for all aspects of the replacement if replaced as a pedestrian or multi-use bridge. Bicycle path funds are money received from the state gas tax based on 1% of total monies received. Approximate cost for this option would be $35,000 to $45,000. Anticipated lifespan would be 50 years. Timetable from Board of Commission decision to completion is 6 to 18 months, depending on the regulatory requirements. An additional annual cost for monitoring and signage from the TRT fund, approximately $200 to $300 per year. Option number 4, replace existing bridge with a vehicular bridge. Remove the existing bridge and replace it with a 30-foot long, 14-foot wide, single-lane galvanized steel bridge capable of supporting 80,000 pounds. This option will require engineering, regulatory permitting, the public bidding process, construction inspection. This would also allow the water line to potentially be reattached to the new bridge. No outside funding has been identified for this option at this time. Approximate costs would be $175,000 to $200,000. Anticipated lifespan 50 years, with the same timetable as replacing with the pedestrian bridge. Additional annual cost for monitoring signage from TRT funds are approximately $200 to $300 a year. We've received several emails seeing how this came out on the county's website. And what emails we've received so far have been favorable to the replacement with the pedestrian bridge. I talked with a couple, I was down in that area yesterday. I talked with a couple of landowners in the vicinity, and they like the idea of the pedestrian bridge, seeing how the bridge has been blocked off for 20 to 25 years. So is there any questions regarding funding opportunities on this or anything else?
I see that Commissioner Bangs has a question.
Is this a footpath that could potentially be used as an evacuation route?
Could you ask that again, please?
Oh, sorry. Would this be like if we did the pedestrian bridge choice, would this be a footpath that could potentially be used as an evacuation route?
It would, however, the 3 or 4 houses that lie along Pacific Street in that area already have access. It would give further access from the beach, but they are right on the beachfront. They would need to move to higher ground immediately.
Well, right. I'm just thinking of how, we do have beachgoers who would need to evacuate. Since I don't live there, I don't have a picture in my head of. So Commissioner Thompson, I think, can answer my question. Go ahead, Commissioner.
The bridge is north-south, evacuation is east.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. And I mean, honestly, my emails are very favorable for a pedestrian bridge, and finding out that the bike, finding out where the funding could come from. Is there, I don't know. I'm favorable for a pedestrian bridge. I feel like that would be very beneficial to the community there, especially because it's already been kind of utilized, to my knowledge, as that. And I mean, what a wonderful little add-in to such a nice community. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs, and I support the pedestrian bridge as well. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. Well, I checked not only informally with some neighbors, I've had positive emails. I asked the Cannon Beach Fire Chief if he saw any issues. I asked a Cannon Beach Fire board member if he saw it. Nobody sees any issues. Everybody's for this. Plus, there's money. Good job, staff. Nice report, too. Option 3, yeah, build a pedestrian bicycle bridge. Elegant, effective.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Toyoka, did you have your hand up?
I did, and I was going to say, Commissioner Thompson, even in District 2 up in Gearhart in this area, Seaside area, there has been support for the pedestrian bridge option as well. A lot of people like to see that, even from that come down from Gearhart Seaside that go to that area, they want to see a pedestrian bridge. They also, the other comment I've received is it would help mitigate foot traffic on Highway 101, which could be dangerous.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Webb, did you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I have done some exploration trips recently, given how this part of the county has been very much on our agenda recently. And it's of course, a lovely area. And I really support the idea of a bicycle pedestrian bridge. I wish we had more of them in the county. I think we all, residents and tourists alike, would love to see more of them. It's too bad. I don't know. Maybe we just need a bicycle trail through Clatsop County. I don't know. Yeah, I thank you, staff, for your diligence here, and I support the recommendation of staff thoroughly.
Sounds like we've got unanimous support for option 3, and I echo what Commissioner Webb just said. Very comprehensive report. Thank you very much for the presentation. Anything further you want to add, Terry?
No, just thank you.
And thank you. We'll move on to item 5, which is the Clatsop County role in affordable housing options. On page 30, I know Monica and Dawn's going to report first. I will have to leave in just a few minutes, so when I do, I'll let Commissioner Thompson convene from there on. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Quayle, members of the board. Just harkening back a little bit to the strategic plan, one of the items that's been discussed and studied has been affordable housing. And as staff has been discussing this topic, we've really been reflecting upon a role for the county that would be timely, that would be effective, and then ultimately would be successful in facilitating new affordable housing stock in the county. And so we ventured through a consultant, having conversations with stakeholder groups, which meant some select cities, some select not-for-profits, and some housing development corporations, which are the nonprofit developers, to really discuss ways in which counties, because many of these organizations work with multiple counties, but to really discuss ways counties can be helpful to the affordable housing equation. Here in Clatsop County, as you know, the county does not have any affordable housing staff. We don't develop housing. We don't maintain affordable housing. And if you look at the full range of 36 counties, counties do it differently. Sometimes housing authorities fall within counties, and then they also have housing departments that do more discretionary public housing development with nonprofit and private partners. You have some where the housing authority is the only housing resource. And what we have here is we have a consortium of multiple counties through NOHA, who is providing federal housing programs and also owning and maintaining a housing stock over those 3 counties. So our question to our stakeholders and partners was, what can the county do to move the needle on housing? And knowing that we have limited resources and frankly, we have limited expertise in housing development. And so they came up with five suggestions, and I'll go through these, but I'll also give examples as I go. Fundamentally, what we had heard was that the county's role needs to be as an advocate and as a convener. And if we can partner with our stakeholders, meaning the housing development corporations, that they feel like that gives them a leg up as they try to put together housing deals. So I just want to reiterate, as I know your board has heard many times, is that convener role for counties is really important, and that advocacy role. The other is that the county does have certain assets we can bring to the table, and those assets come in the form of land. And that's obviously land that often comes through right-of-way acquisitions, and it also comes through foreclosures. And so we have taken the opportunity, and we included them in this report, of some of those properties that may eventually lend themselves into some viable affordable housing developments. And I'll go over some of those in a few minutes. But one is bringing our land to the table, and then through a process, usually a QRF, have different nonprofit housing providers tell us what they would do with those properties, select a nonprofit developer, and then have them start working through the financing process and the development process. And so that land is a very vital interest and a vital resource for the affordable housing generation. And then beyond that, there are always very specific things that the county can do working with our city partners to look at some of the code requirements on affordable housing, whether it's parking requirements, setbacks, landscaping. There's all kinds of different requirements that oftentimes affordable housing developers would like to have conversations about, whether it's variances or some other accommodations. And then it's to play this continual role as we move forward, to have long-standing reciprocal relationships with these nonprofit housing providers so that we can have a steady stream of projects within the county. Because this isn't a one-time challenge. This is an ongoing sustainable challenge of building additional units over time. We're also fortunate that some of our nonprofit partners like CBH are also going to be getting into the housing business, which is great. and their focus is really on permanent supportive housing, which fits a very important niche. But it's going to take all of us to do our small part to make the difference that the community needs. Beyond that, we have spoken to NOHA, to Jim Evans, because the issue becomes, okay, the county has property, who at the county is going to facilitate these relationships with the not-for-profit developers, and who can be the best resource in helping advocate for and to liaison with some of the funding sources. And so our idea was that if the county contributed resources to NOHA and allowing them to then hire a resource that would focus specifically on Clatsop County housing development, would put them in a home where they would feel support, because there are other staff that are working on affordable housing issues, and their expertise could be leveraged by this additional staff person. That whether that is ultimately an idea that has legs is not fully developed yet, but that's one of the options. The other option is that we hire a county staff to facilitate these kinds of partnerships, or a consultant. So there's a number of options, and we're still working through that. But fundamentally, our question for the board is does that role make sense? It's tangible, but it does take property, and we'll dedicate it to affordable housing with your board's approval. And so we would be more active into the affordable housing realm, but it would be somewhat more passive than what you would see in some other counties. So again, we did identify some of the properties that may be suitable for affordable housing, but we are providing those just as a sense of the environment. We weren't really recommending any of those right now. Again, we'd have to come back to your board, go through more of a diligence process, and decide which ones we'd want to go out for a QRF. But so that's kind of where we are. We feel strongly that there's some things we can do to enhance affordable housing, but we wanted to bring this to your board and have a conceptual conversation before we get too far. So, and I don't know if Monica would like to add anything before we take questions. So Vice Chair Thompson, if you could, I will defer.
If I can recognize myself now, I'm so used to being getting recognized. Thank you, sir. I love this report. I love that we're moving forward on housing. Good job, staff. And hooray for Commissioner Webb for her liaison with NOHA, which also helps that. But when I looked at the list, I thought, we have Warrenton, we have Astoria. There's no seaside in this. So I'm curious about that. I spoke with Assistant County Manager Steele. She said, she and I talked a little bit. I'm eager to have a role for the board in this, because in terms of access to resources, I spend a big chunk of my life going to committee meetings so that I'll have access to resources for Clatsop County. So Ms. Steele said, oh, there's an advisory committee. I thought, well, dandy, if board member or board members are on the advisory committee, then that makes best use of our efforts for the benefit of Clatsop County to nourish the structural work that you're doing. Does that make sense?
Vice Chair Thompson, members of the board, I think that does make sense. I think that, our vision is that there is an advisory committee of city, county, and other select representatives that can really create the table for the ongoing collaboration that building affordable housing needs. Because most of the county's property, most of our surplus property that is developable it's obviously within the urban growth boundary, and it's within cities. And so we need a partnership with the cities as we walk through this. And there's those usual discussions that need to be taking place about what provisions might the cities and the counties support to really enable this housing to be developed. And sometimes that's code issues, sometimes it's some creative financing issues. So we think an advisory committee will be important, and having board involvement on that will be critical. And again, we just need to put the shovel in the ground from my perspective and just start this process, because there is muscle memory that is important to these affordable housing projects, and we just don't have that muscle memory right now because we haven't done it together. And so I think staff is just eager to get the process started.
Hooray for that. Commissioner Tayoka.
Well, thank you, County Manager. I appreciate it, and I like the report you put out. As I was reading it, though, I kept thinking in my mind as we're looking at land use and zoning. In addition to affordable, we need to dovetail market-based housing into our thought process as well, because I think that's a natural progression that we need to consider. And I think we can achieve more market-based homes if we look, as we're reviewing, like especially zoning and land use for affordable housing, we could look at it in the same take as market-based housing, because hopefully the people who will use the affordable housing, will progress to market-based housing, and we can keep a flow. We don't want to have people stagnant at any level. We want people to grow and develop and achieve. So we have to look at that progression of housing as well as employment, as well as resources. So I'd like to incorporate that into our process.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think that, for those of us that have been working with this issue over a career and really multiple communities, I think there's a lot of pinch points to housing, and certainly within Clatsop County, market-based housing is also one of those, as we know, because a lot of employers tell us how difficult it is for their employees to find housing, even at the market level. So, and of course, there is a relationship with employment as well. So I think taking kind of a holistic approach is important. At the same time, moving forward with some of these opportunities that some of our surplus land might present to get that ball rolling, because developing affordable housing through the nonprofit developers, as I know all of you know, is not a quick process. Getting state tax credits and all the creative financing that is required, potentially Section 8 project vouchers, it just takes time. And so I think we can start that process while we still deal with the larger synchronization issues that Commissioner Toyoka is also raising. So
I love it that Commissioner Toyoka is being progressive. It cracks me up. That's good. That's good. And I like the dovetailed and the expand scope and vision. Commissioner Bangs. Commissioner, you're muted.
Well, darn. I think, County Manager, that you answered this previously, but that the focus would be mainly within our municipalities and not in our unincorporated, just due to our rules and regulations regarding development in the unincorporated areas outside the urban growth boundary. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that that's where the majority of opportunities lay right now. But I think, Commissioner Webb and also you, Commissioner Banks, have also raised, the question about other development in the more rural areas. And I think that is still something we should look at and we should progress conversations on. But I just think that many of the opportunities that are in front of us right now that would be actionable are some of those that have been identified in the staff report that just happen to be within cities right now.
Yeah, and I totally understand. I think my biggest thing is I want to leave the door open, as Commissioner Toyoka, stated that, as we're, flexing our muscles and relearning how to use them, that we are also forward thinking. in that process, so that, you know, if we find a measurable, feasible thing that is working, let's repeat in other locations, because I know in our rural community, housing is a real issue. Availability of housing is a real issue of all levels, market, low income, you know, it's a real issue. And so if we can wiggle as much as we can to potentially be able to open some development, it would sure be nice.
Well, and I think to your point, Commissioner Bangs, is that I think, you know, the more we get involved, then the expanse of the opportunity will grow. And I think that we will have opportunities in 2 or 3 years that we may not see right now, just because we will be more practiced at this. And so I think that those are legitimate, you know, issues. And I think that we as a community will be able to then take those on as we move through this process. I just feel a certain urgency just to begin the process, because I think we've talked about affordable housing a lot, and at some point you just need to have that first inertia forward. And not that there aren't great projects that are going on now, because there are, but I think the county can also help propel. So.
Well, and just to follow up, I think that what you presented regarding staffing is very feasible, but it's also measurable. And so if we find that whatever direction that we choose to go in regards to staffing this project or creating an environment of communication, it's measurable. And so we can always change it. And I appreciate what you presented to us.
Thank you. Commissioner Webb, I bet you have something to say.
County Manager Boone, you may have to help me out here. This idea actually was raised at the last NOHA board meeting, and it was not well received. Clatsop County has a long, you know, is a sort of a newcomer to NOHA, and yet because for many years the county had its own housing authority, and the members of the board out in our neighboring counties feel that they rescued us due to a very costly adverse lawsuit and apparently some very difficult relations with the housing authority staff. I think they still have an attitude that, and incidentally, as far as NOAA is concerned, there are more units in right now of various kind. You know, public housing, well, that's not even the right word. Supportive housing is not always the same programs, and so there are different, you know, there are different populations to be served through different kinds of housing assistance, and as I say, there are other county, our partner counties. Tillamook does have a housing, what do they call it? I think they call it a housing commission. But they're not terribly active, and they don't get in the business of project development. And in Columbia County, the CAP agency does do some housing, So as I say, the feelings were pretty negative about putting a Clatsop County employee, because there are feelings, especially in Tillamook County, that because we are at the center and because the office of NOAA is here in Clatsop County, that Clatsop County gets all the love. So I think that's a little bit of a tough road to hoe, having somebody there. I really like the idea of the county being an ambitious convener. I've been real disappointed after we did the housing study, which, remember, was half funded, 50 grand from the county and 10 from each of the cities. And I have seen very little results coming from that, including from our standpoint. I mean, I think one of the things we need to do in the comp plan, for instance, is take a close look at how we can accommodate more growth in our rural areas. But at the same time, we have incredible infrastructure constraints. So, I think it's a tough thing. And I love the idea of the county being a convener, sitting down with the cities and having a little bit of a, I don't know, where are we all kind of a meeting, and what are we doing to help, etc. I'm also very concerned that we have so little supportive housing in South County. I mean, when you look at the map, most of our properties in fact, most of our properties are in Warrenton. So it's a tough go. And right now I have to tell you that in negotiating with the city of Warrenton for our Trillium project, they're killing us with system development charges. And I haven't given up on that yet. I'm hoping to be able to work with them on this. But I think that some kind of a housing consortium that could get us talking with the cities, because that's where our greatest opportunities are for any kind of housing, but especially workforce or supported housing. So I love that idea. I love that idea. But in terms of actually putting somebody in NOAA, I'm very nervous about.
Well, if I can just, Commissioner Webb, if I can just add a little bit, is that the county in presenting a sketch of what a role might be, we've certainly looked at various options on how we might effectuate that. And certainly one option was to provide resources to NOAA so that they could hire their own person to work on behalf of the broader Clatsop County. But other options are to have a consultant come on and just help us work on some very specific projects that are approved by the board, working with the nonprofit providers. And it could be a county staff person that comes on and fills that. So I think there's various ways we could do that. Part of our reason for discussing the NOAA option with Jim Evans was that having a consultant or a staff person that is fairly isolated, because the county doesn't have other staff working on affordable housing, can be isolating, and being with others that are working in that arena can be invigorating. And so, but certainly if it's not the right time, if it's not the right service for NOAA to be getting into, we certainly respect that. And the county will look at other alternatives. But if it's not NOAA, it will be us, either by a consultant or by a staff person. So.
Well, I think it's also helpful to remember that any HUD assistance, most federal, and it's all federal really, money that goes for housing assistance comes through HUD. There are a few other programs from the Veterans Administration and from AG, but in general, it's HUD, and HUD likes to work with their approved, sanctioned housing authorities. And so it would be very difficult to get HUD support, which is really the primary, primarily the mechanism for funds that are supplemental. You know, I mean, there are plenty of affordable units that are financed in the private sector. But if those are, you have to have those developers on hand, and I think it's wonderful that your consultant talked, to those people, because they're out there.
Well, I mean,
So
it was actually
it's
myself too. If I could just real quickly, as Monica spoke with about 6 of them ourselves. And so, because part of it was to have the county have a relationship with these housing developers. And so I agree that, federal funding is always going to be limited, and it's very earmarked. And what's going to build some of these is really tax credit financing and some of the state dollars. And so, and again, if you have the right nonprofit developer, they have access and they know those programs in and out. And that's something we don't. I mean, just to be completely frank, this is a discipline, and you need expertise in the discipline, and you need practice in the discipline. And I just frankly need to be honest about where our strengths and our limitations are, and this is one of our limitations. And so we would need to buy that expertise. And again, I think that's really what we're talking about is what's the best way to buy that expertise. So.
No, I agree.
County manager, assistant county manager, thank you for this work. It's inspiring. It's hopeful. We are getting in the game. As Commissioner Webb points out, we had that housing study. The board that existed then was unwilling to have a commissioner be involved with that. So it really kind of cut the legs off. Now you're putting the wheels back on the bus. So we're going to get on the road. Now, where we go and how much horsepower we have, if I can continue the metaphor, we'll see. But we're in the game. We're in the game long term. We're in the game to build capacity locally, regionally, across the state. We're well begun. So thank you for that. I would ask you though, and not to speak for Commissioner Toyoka, who shares with me representation from Seaside, I'd like to have you circle back around and see if there's anything you can do with Seaside in Seaside, if there's some way we can be both creative and flexible, because I appreciate Commissioner Webb's point that we're pretty much focused on North County. I know you're in the preliminary stages, and I don't want to get you expanding too far beyond your capacity, because I want you to be successful, and I trust you to know how to do the process for the successful outcome. So I trust you. And
if I can just say real quick, Vice Chair Thompson, is that we are also aware of the need in South County, and it's going to be one of those things that will reveal itself as we continually work. We just happen to not have the same types of properties at our disposal in South County that we do in some other areas, but certainly those conversations with the city of Seaside and then us continuing looking at our inventory to see where those opportunities might arise will be something we will continually track. So. And I think that, just real quickly, is that I think that if we create a committee, if the board participates in that and we get the cities at the table, having those conversations on a project by project basis can be really helpful to tackling some of the larger issues. Sometimes the larger issues just don't get traction until you deal with it on a project by project basis. And so That's part of what our strategy is to get folks together and talk about discrete projects and talk about what is necessary to make those discrete projects work. And then suddenly you have a foothold into tackling some of the larger issues. So
those of us who think in economist terms might call it micro to macro. Congratulations, well done. Is there any commissioner who wants to say more? Any staff? Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, one thought that about this proposal that I liked so much was the issue that I asked myself the question, okay, we weren't wildly crazy about the housing study, but we do have, it's a starting point. And maybe maybe the issue that the cities haven't gotten on board more actively is the same as it is with us. They don't have the capacity. And so being able to provide that capacity would be terrific. And look at it, in more of a capacity building way, because I gotta tell you, after 3 years on NOAA's board, this is complicated stuff. I mean, it really is. It's, putting together these projects is really onerous. And yet the good news is there now are a lot of companies out there that are investing in affordable housing and have gotten pretty good at it. And if you didn't see, somebody sent me or if you didn't take a tour of the Merwin, those are the kinds of organizations that have really gotten good about this. And they're often centered or begun in urban areas, but they're increasingly looking to do business in rural areas, rural being, small cities. And so there is a way to do capacity building outside of NOAA that I think might be really helpful. So, I love the idea. To me, it's our way of saying, okay, we paid for half of this housing study. Let's do let's do a sit down and talk about what each of the participants, is doing and how can that county help, which is I think pretty wonderful, would be pretty wonderful.
Somehow I imagine that's what the county manager and assistant county manager had in mind, but I'm guessing because they're usually ahead of us in that regard. So I said during a meeting that we have staff to help make commissioners' dreams turn into reality. So for those of us who have had this dream, I think we are well begun, and I appreciate the efforts of staff. Thank you. However we can cooperate, however we can further your work. I would remind my colleagues that AOC has a Health and Human Services Committee that also focuses and supports housing efforts around the state. I'm also I sit on the Community Action Team board. So we have partners around the state and around the region, as well as with NOAA. So whatever we can do to support your good work, we want to do that. Is there anything further that we need to talk about before we adjourn the meeting? I think we're done. Thank you everyone for being here, for contributing your time, your skills, and your passion to our good work. Take care. Bye-bye now.